Hi everyone, thank you for joining us on today's webinar. My name is Bethany and I'm the Relationship and Engagement Manager here at UMI, and today I'm hosting this webinar for the EM3 Growth Hub. Before we begin, I'd like to give a little background information on the Growth Hub in case you knew. So they are a fully funded business support service providing advice, coaching, webinars and signposting to SMEs. Their mission is to help you recover, adapt and develop sustainable growth and become more productive and profitable. All businesses at any stage of the development can access and benefit from EM3 services, including support around COVID recovery and UK transition support. Additionally, there's a specialist growth service targeted at businesses operating within key sectors, and this offers up to 2 days of free one-to-one business support and mentoring. Please see enterprisemp3growthhub.co.uk for more information. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our guest speaker today, Ges Ray.
Thank you, Bethany.
Hi.
You are a media publishing business. Now, that's not even a question. It's a statement. All of us in this virtual room are media publishing businesses. We take the information that we think we need to share and we share it virtually or socially on social media. And in a world where everyone can create media, you are a social media or a publishing company in your own right. Zoom sessions, vlogs, webinars, live streams, YouTube channels, TikToks. We cannot stop dancing our thumb over that little red button, that round and vibrant circle of scarlet that entices us to press, 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 press. And with little foresight, perhaps, as to the permanence of what we published. It's out there forever. So how can we build our performance skills, our speak performance skills, to make us more and more professional? In this short session, let's look at a couple of fundamentals, the sort of fundamentals that make you think, I know that. Yet in the moment, we tend to forget it. And also a couple of thoughts around engagement with your clients. How do you reach your client through the Gorgon eye and the looking glass? And let's use the chat as freely as we possibly can for questions. Pop them as they appear to you, and we'll deal with them at the end. But we'll use the chat room as much as possible. So, how professional do you appear on screen to your clients? Is this you? It's 2 minutes to go. There's a key client that's about to appear for a meeting. Now, of course, we're all professionals, and you are picking up the threads with your clients through the screen, communicating as professionally via the screen as you used to. Or are you? To pick a famous quote, all the world's a stage and all the men and women are merely players. How apt when that was written umpteen hundred years ago by Shakespeare. 3 questions to ask of yourself at this point. How do you show up on screen? What's the experience for your client on the screen? And why does this even matter? After all, it's just, communicating through your screen, isn't it? It's just Zoom, it's Teams, it's Blue Jeans, it's ON24. It's just a platform. Let's first of all look at why it matters. Think of your daily lives, of your clients' daily lives. You are cocooned in a slick, professional transmedia bubble almost every moment of every day. The advertising, the marketing that surrounds you on social media, on TV, on your phone, constantly. Here's a quick 1-word poll for you. Let's use the chat box for this and just type yes in the chat box if this is you. Who else records as much as they can on the TV box to watch later because you want to avoid the adverts? Is that you? You just want to record as much as possible? Just chuck in yes. If you are yes, you see the yeses are pouring in. I am with you. Don't we just detest? No, that's too strong a word. The adverts interfere, don't they? So we record on the box, so we can just go click, 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 and get rid of them. Absolutely. God, the screen is now full of yeses. Thank you. But whether we love them or hate them, and it's a bit like Brussels sprouts or Marmite, nevertheless, there is a professionalism around those adverts. You and your client, oh, someone's actually said no, then I take my hat off to you if you like watching the adverts. Good for you. And I wish I could join you. But our clients and you are surrounded by the professionalism of the production values of those adverts. So as a professional, you are accustomed to setting high standards when you meet the client in the room. We all do. It's what we do, meeting their expectations. But now you are on screen in a virtual room with an added layer of skills to put onto those communications within those expectations that have been set. Then there's an added set of pitfalls that we desperately want to avoid. So let's look at a couple of fundamentals to enable you to add that layer of professionalism exactly as you want to when you're communicating. Let's do a quick poll, and again we'll just use the chat for put the answers in, and we'll do A or B. So the answers will be A or B, and I will read out the two questions and ask you simply to put A or B as you think is appropriate to you. And rest assured, I'm not taking any names for this. So let's just chuck it in. So the questions are, or the question is, where is your audience? And the answer to A is, I'm not quite sure. They might be in the office, they might be at home office, they might be in the loo for all I know. And answer B is, I know exactly where my audience is. So I'll read the question again. Where is your audience? And it's either A, because you're not quite certain, or B, because you know exactly where your audience is. So A or B, just chuck them in as you think. Let's just see what the answers are. Thank you. And again, answers pouring in, and there's a useful mixture there. And I phrase that question deliberately in that way because often when we're communicating through the screen, there's a thinking, well, where is our client located? Are they sitting at their desk at home? Are they in the office? Where actually are they? But what I would suggest is that the answer B is actually the accurate one, because the where is your audience? Your audience is exactly where I'm going to put my thumb now. So that gorgon eye of a camera that sits atop your laptop screen or in the webcam, your audience is there. Again, let's put that in context of a meeting. We're all professionals. We understand the rationale for engaging visually with people in the room. We hold their gaze at the right moment. We glance away with the norms of society. That's what we do in a room with people. We know how to do this. It's automatic for us. But now we're on screen. Sometimes there's a sense of something missing. Let's put that into context. You're out for a walk with your friends and family. Actually, you'd get arrested at the moment, wouldn't you? But in the days of yore, you went out for a walk with your friends and your family, and someone said, let's take a quick snap to capture this moment. So out comes this wonderful device, and a photo is taken. Now, when it is sent round to the family afterwards, and you look at the faces in the picture, often there's a sense that there's not quite engagement there, apart from one person who was either by purpose or accidentally managed to make sure that they look not at the overall screen, but the tiny little dot at the end, because what they've done is they've looked at the camera. And that sense of engagement, that is what makes the connection for us when we're dealing with our audiences. Prove it to yourself. After this session, just grab your phone, your tablet, and just stick it on a selfie stick or hold it at arm's length, and just look away, and then come back and just look at the screen in general and take an image. Do the same and look directly now at that tiny little dot of a camera and compare the two. Now, we're not talking massive difference, we're talking marginal gains here. But what happens is we connect with the audience by making sure we're looking at this gorgon eye of a camera on the top of the laptop. Now, understandably, as human beings, what we want to do is to get the reaction and the feedback from our audience. So it's automatic for us to look down, and I'll do exactly that now. I look down because I want to pick up, has that point landed? Is someone actually giving me some reaction? Are they still there? Have they gone off to make a cup of coffee and order a pizza? But what I've done, and it would, if I stayed like this, you would start to feel that there was no connection, because that connection as a human being has just been broken. So major fundamental tip number one is remember where your audience is. And your audience is this tiny little dot that is somewhere on the bit of kit in front of you. A suggestion that can help remember that. And again, you may have heard this already from me if you've been involved in previous sessions, but just grab a Post-it note, draw a smiley face on it, and stick it up there by your camera, just to get used to the fact that that's where our audience is, and it will draw our attention to it. And a brilliant tip from someone on a workshop a little while ago that I've hooked forever is what she said is she cut out a little picture of someone that quite appealed to her in the movie world and put that up by the camera. And it just meant that every time she looked up, she got an image that she wanted to see in the first place, and it helped remember to look at the camera on the screen. It will become an automatic reaction for you. It's like everything with humans and habits. If we get used to doing it, we will remember it, and it will become part of our communication medium on screen. And I can hear a question already coming in the back of your minds. Well, I can't spend the entire workshop doing this, otherwise I've got no communication whatsoever. Okay, if you're in the team and just having a meeting, then yeah, of course we all do. We look around and we pick up the reactions. But if you're the one that's delivering, if you're the one that's presenting, may I suggest a ratio that you will probably all know, Pareto's law, the 80-20 rule of business. 80% of our profits come from 20% of our clients. Gentlemen, I have been advised that we apparently only wear 20% of what's in our wardrobes at any one time, probably down to 5 or 10% now, as we only need tracky bottoms and a shirt to do anything. But the 80-20 rule, why not just apply that as a rule when you are delivering 80% of your time to this camera, and give yourself 20% to flip back and have a look and see what the rest of the world is actually doing. I'll suggest a couple of things to be wary of as well, and to avoid when we're communicating here. First one, the nonagenarian in the Nissan Micra effect. So transport yourselves outside the screen at the moment. You've been driving to the supermarket in days when we could. Everyone's on home deliveries now, aren't they? But you're driving to the supermarket, yeah, Lidl, Sainsbury's, or you're feeling flush, so you're going to Waitrose and John Lewis. But you pull up at the traffic lights and you look over at the car that's stopped on the other side of the road, and why is it always a nonagenarian in a Nissan Micra? But what you actually see is this. You actually see what appears to be an empty vehicle, and you're wondering, is anyone actually driving that car? And then what gradually appears, and it's usually this sort of hat, you do realize that actually someone is actually driving that vehicle. And then a little face appears and you realize there's someone there. Why do I use such a daft illustration? How many times have you come onto a session on screen and the people on there have not actually adjusted their cameras beforehand? Thank you, nice hat. Yeah, I'll take that for granted. People have not set their cameras beforehand, and what you get, certainly for my vintage, you know, if I did that, you'd get the bald pate here, which I don't recommend. But people take on board the first image within fractions of a second, and that is the image that they are left with for the rest of that session, and potentially forever. So a plea, before you wake up the session and get your camera up and running, just hop on and check what is your presentation on the screen. What are your audience actually going to see? And then another another practical suggestion to avoid. I won't do it too dramatically, otherwise you will have an image of me that you will never, ever, ever forget. But it was a BBC, no, now ITV actually, news guy who did it on the early days of Prime Minister's Question Times in lockdown. And I think his camera must have been tucked down the corner of his laptop, because he got really close to the screen, and what you got was his nose hairs. Now, brilliant though he is, I will now forever associate with him with nose hairs on screen. May I suggest that is an image that you don't actually want your clients to remember. So, major tip here, please look at that camera. Make sure you're engaged with the camera. Make sure you've don't use Waitrox, buy from an M&S. Yep, okay, I'm with you. Quality is the order of this particular session. But use the camera to make sure you deliver quality goods and quality products, the essence of your personality, to your clients. Okay, let's move on from the camera. A question: what is the first thing that enters the room when you are on screen? So another quick poll, and here we'll have three possibilities. We'll have A, B, and C. So let me ask the question. I'll give you the three possibilities, and then let's hit that chat box and let's see some answers. When you go on to Zoom, when you go on to MS Teams, when you go on to Google Hangout, do you A, just switch it on, B, yeah, switch it on, but have a cough and a splutter, and obviously have a glass of water ready, because we all need it, or C, do you do all that, but also warm up your voice for 10 minutes with voice exercises before you say a word? So the question is, when you go on to Zoom, MS Teams, or any client, do you A, just switch it on and just start? B, do you have a quick splutter and a cough as well with a glass of water? Or C, do you warm up your voice for 10 minutes before you say a word? I'm just watching the answers come in. Brilliant, thank you. So we've got A's and B's. Interesting, and I applaud that, particularly the B's, because you want to make sure that you've got something to catch that cough before it actually happens. Oh, Riet, I love that. I do put lipstick on as well. And Simon is saying voice exercises would be useful. Please advise me. Okay. So let me set the scene, and then I'll do a very brief session on exactly that, if that's okay, Simon. Your voice, to answer the original question, is the first thing that enters the room. So your clients have seen your face, they've seen your wonderful visage, but the first thing that enters the room that they get involved with is this instrument here, is your voice. Again, let's put that in context with the pre-world, the pre-COVID world, and now. So you've got a meeting, you've got a client, perhaps the other side of the world in another time zone. It's got to be a pretty early meeting, and yeah, you're going to make that because you want to fit what the client wants. In days of yore, we would have traveled, wouldn't we, to get to our office? So yeah, we'd have probably gone up early. We'd have had our first coffee. We would have traveled. We wouldn't have said anything to anybody, because we're British and we travel on the train and the tube without saying a word. But we'd have got there. But when we got in the office, we'd have probably had some conversation. Hello, Fred. Hello, Frida. How's the dog? How's the chat? How's the cat? Anything to get things going. We just have a little conversation. We answer some emails. We have another cup of coffee, some more chit chat, and then we wake up on the screen and we get going. Today, we get up. If we've got partners in the house, they may have decided they're not bothering because it's just not worth getting up. So it's just you. Maybe a grunt to the pet, the dog, the cat, the budgerigar, maybe a slurp of coffee. Is the first voice that your contact, that your clients hear, the 6:30 in the morning, I haven't had my full cup of coffee voice yet? Is that the voice that your clients are going to hear? Mark says he sorts his hair out as well. That I also applaud. Those who haven't got much don't have much trouble there, but getting that is right. But voice, and comes back to voice exercises, and something you can do immediately now that will have one change, and then we can touch on a few simple things you can do to build more changes. If I say to you, give me a great big smile, okay, I can't see you, but give me a great big smile. Make your day feel better, because as you probably know, if you smile to yourself, it even changes the way you feel about the world and about yourself. So give me a great big smile. And I can feel the warmth of your smiles coming through this screen. Smiling does two things for us, and particularly for our audience as well. At a fundamental level, you're like an evolutionary level. Smiling is what we do when we meet a stranger. You did it in the room, didn't you? You'd set the room, you get the coffee ready, you open the door, you welcome them with a handshake. God, could anyone remember handshakes? You welcome them with a handshake and a beaming smile. Because in evolutionary terms, a smile is saying, okay, you're not from my clan, my family, my bunch, my social media tribe. You're not from that team. But unlike thousands of years ago, I'm not actually going to slaughter you when I meet you. I'm going to welcome you for a pleasant conversation. We're going to be friends. We're going to communicate. So at a fundamental level, a smile sets that image for the person you're talking to. If any of you, like me, are absolutely mad, amateur, passionate choral singers, and stress the word amateur, although I did sing a solo on stage at the Carnegie Hall in New York a year or two ago. I just dropped that one in. But if you smile, it actually changes the flow of air across the soft palate. And any of you who sing like I do will have had MDs of the choirs saying, for heaven's sake, smile. Of course, they want the choir to look warm and friendly to the audience, but they know that smiling makes the sound that you produce just a fraction richer, warmer, and more engaging. Prove it to yourself. After this session, grab your phone, your any device that records, and deliberately revert to the "it's 6:30 in the morning, I've not had my cup of coffee" voice yet. Find a little paragraph or something to read to yourself, press record, and just record it. Stop the recording. Change mode, go and have a cup of coffee, get yourself in the zone, put a great big grin on, press record again, and record the same thing with a smile on your face. And then listen. With the caveat that none of us like listening to our own voices. Listen through the ears of your client, your contact the other side of the screen. What are they going to want to listen to? What demonstrates engagement to them? What are they going to be happy with when they actually talk to you? I would suggest, and you can prove it to yourself here, "Oh, you will need to give us a tune at the end," said Rena. I'm better in a choir, yeah, but actually, I'll touch on that. Here's a couple of daft things that you can do, depending on where the rest of your family are at the time, because you may get moaned at for waking them up early. Just shut yourself in the bathroom and just start with yawning, because yawning actually does stretch the voice out a bit. And then do a couple of wee exercises. Now, this is where I make you the promise. In any workshop that I'm involved in, I always make you the promise that I will be your embarrassment sponge. You can remain suave, sophisticated, and sanguine human beings. I've got my senior rail card. I don't care anymore. I will absorb all the silliness. So the silliness here is actually doing some voice exercises. You can just go quietly in the corner and just go, and just stretch it out. Yes, Margarita, I agree. Mindful yawning is also good for de-stressing. If you put a great big smile on and do some stretching exercises, you will feel better. And then get the lips and the teeth moving. Red lorry, yellow lorry, 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 red lorry. Incredibly daft. And you may think, I can't do this. Everyone's going to be watching. But they're not. You're at home. You're in the loo with the door shut. And get this warmed up and stretched. And then I promise you that the sound that you make, the first thing that arrives into the room that you have just invited your clients to enter, will be marginally richer, warmer, and more listenable to. And the human ears are sensitive enough to pick this up. An illustration of that. If anyone else here is of the vintage where you can remember valve radios, just chuck yes in the chat. Anyone remember valve radios? Have I not reached the right audience? But let me just, I grew up on a council estate at the back end of Dartford. You know, I'm a 1950s baby, and in the 60s, unfortunately, yes, says Howard, I'm with you. So we're going back to the early 1960s now, and the only communication device in our house, you know, no phones or anything like that in those days. In fact, the electricity came in through wires that looped under the back door. I remember it. But we had a valve radio. Now, if Dad wanted to listen to the Navy Lark or the Clitheroe Kid at 2 o'clock, and that really does show my vintage, I know, what we had to do was turn on that radio at about 5 minutes to 2. And these exquisite, beautiful looking, glowing valves would just glow warmer and warmer and warmer, because the radio would not work until the valves were fully warmed up. Think of your voice as a valve radio. Your voice, if you just switch it on, computers work instantly, don't they? And we all upgrade. I upgraded from an old Windows laptop that was taking 15 minutes to wake up in the morning to a MacBook that just goes in seconds. And we expect that now. That's what we want. That's what we want our equipment to do. Our voice is just like that valve radio, and our voice needs help in actually getting there. So we've made sure that everything looks right there. We've made sure that our voice is in the right position. A question, and this is just a rhetorical question, no poll on this, but what effort do you put in to preparing the room, the meeting room that your clients are going to see? Extra bonus points if you recognize the background that's just appeared behind me. If you recognize that, just chuck it in the chat. Yes, capital letters, yes. Someone said yes. Yeah, if anyone, go chuck them in if you recognize it, and just tell me where I am. While you're doing that, let's just set the context again. We've established that you are a consummate professional. You prepare thoroughly for client meetings. Your dress style, even probably on Zoom, is appropriate to the situation, the venue, the client, and you're sensitive to your client's preferences. I used to be a bank manager. Back in the 1990s, I was an old-fashioned, proper frontline bank manager with a quarter of a century of bank training behind me, and I ran a small unit looking after high net worth clients, which for a lad who grew up on a council estate in the 60s was quite an experience. But I knew their preferences down to their coffee, down to their biscuits. But is that half-eaten digestive that you're munching before the meeting just actually still in sight on the desk? Or those coffee cups that in the meeting room would have been polished to perfection, all laid out on a table with the handles all pointing the same way for the right image, with the company logo facing forward. Are they now actually in sight, but with those little stainy dribbles that always end up down the outside of a coffee cup actually facing the client? What is the client seeing when they appear on screen to see you? Test this. Now, I may be insulting you unnecessarily here, but 2 suggestions for testing. Firstly, when this is over, just stand up, go the other side of your desk or against the wall if the laptop is against the wall, and just drink in the visage. Just soak in what is around that your client is actually seeing. Then come back to your desk, wake up the platform, Zoom, Teams, whatever it is you're on, wake up the one for you and just have a look to see what your client is actually seeing around you. Because to go back to what I was saying earlier, the client that you're talking to will take in an image within tenths of a second, and that image will remain with them forever. There's a horror story on that my publishers told me of a prospect where they'd had emails and they'd been communicating. They were ready for the first Zoom meeting to actually try and make it happen. So the screen opens and the potential client opens it. No, none of you would do this, I know, but the potential client opens it in bed. So this chap's lying in bed, and the first image that is seen by my colleague is of, and you can drink in the view from the navel upwards, a hairy chest with the pajamas open, a medallion, an unshaven chin, and bed hair. That is the first image that was created. Guess what? That project never happened. So fundamental. I know it's so fundamental, but the fundamental number 3 is just check the image and the background as to what's actually happening. Let's move on from fundamentals to engagement. What can we do to engage with our clients, the other side of the screen, the other side of this looking glass? What we want to do as the ones that are delivering, the ones that are engaging, we want to engage our audience. We want to compel them to keep listening. We want to haunt them with some form of emotional engagement and with the value that we deliver, and obsess them with that value so they want to come back. What can we do that separates us from all the other webinars that are going on, from everything else that's happening on screen, to help us be remembered? So let's go back to that experience in the room. What do your clients experience that you are delivering for them that they are going to remember? Let's take an example, an illustration of that. I'm going to ask you to delve into your childhood memories for a moment, just for a moment, and just think of things that are stuck with you all through your adult life as things from childhood that you simply never forgot. I'll give you an example just to get the the brain juices going. A colleague of mine, when he was about 6 or 7, eating dinner with his family, and he cut in. He realized that on his plate was a piece of cauliflower with a half eaten or half a maggot in that cauliflower. So the realization that potentially the other piece of cauliflower with the other half of the maggot was inside him. It's an experience he never forgot from that moment onwards, and will never, ever eat another piece of cauliflower again in his life. Maybe that's a bit dramatic, but what experiences can you recall from your childhood? Let's just chuck them in the chat. Little vignettes, tiny little things that you remember that as a child have stuck with you. It might have been something that was horror like that, and it really drove you nuts, or it might have been some pleasurable experience that you forever remembered. What experiences have you had that as a child have stuck with you forever? And if they do, if they come to you now, just put them in the chat. Just you can sanitize them if you like. Just put them in the chat so we can get an experience of flavors and feelings from a childhood. And there was one from mine that, again, I'll never ever forget. In the garden of the council house in Dartford, there was an unmade bit down the bottom, and Dad got me an old bike from somewhere, and I will never ever forget riding that bike very proudly down the garden, mounting a hill on the bike, which I probably wasn't used to because I wasn't used to riding a bike, and falling off. The difficulty was that hill was actually waist high in nettles. So I have a vivid memory of a particular situation where something happened, something rather unpleasant happened, and I've never, ever forgotten it. Howard, thank you. Seeing a cow being milked at age 5, can't drink milk on its own ever since. Mark, going over my handlebars when jumping crates, thinking I was evil Knievel. Yeah, I'm with you. A parallel. What we did on bikes when we were youngsters was just, we just do it, wouldn't we? Make it happen. Why am I taking you back to your childhood memories? Because you have never ever forgotten them. They are visceral memories, they are feelings, they are emotions that you never ever forget. Sometimes we buy a bag of sweets, don't we? Or our youngsters bring some sweets home, and it just sets off memories. I don't know about you, but if I ever get the smell of sherbet, I'm back to those little tubes with a stick of licorice on the top that we used to get as kids. So take that as part of what we are doing as experience providers to our audience, the other side of the screen. As human beings, interestingly, as human beings, what are we hardwired to remember? We're all in the world of business, of information, of facts and figures, and we feel we need to deliver this in a very professional way. Of course we do. I can almost guarantee you that most of your audience will leave a session where facts and figures alone have been delivered. And yeah, it might be relevant that they've taken something, a snippet that they're going to use in some other area. But most of us just don't remember that. Why is that? And I'll finish today on just that reflection on storytelling that is so, so important. What we remember, and here's just a hint of engagement with our clients. What we remember is stories when they come to us from the other side of the screen. So an example, an illustration of why that's so important. Anyone remember one of these wonderful little creatures? So this was this beautifully constructed brass and wood item that may have been in Granddad's toolkit. It is a magnificent creation. It is so sensuous to the touch that I just love it. I'd love to be able to say this is genuinely from Granddad's toolkit, but actually I live in Dorking and we have a hardware store called Cummings where you can still buy this stuff. So we're really with the times down here. If this magnificent bit of kit, which to me is a yardstick, and to many of you will be a meter stick. To me, it's a yardstick because I'm pre-decimal. I can still calculate that 75p is 15 shillings. Thank you very much. If this wonderful bit of measuring kit illustrates the amount of time that we as human beings have been able to communicate with our fellow human beings, way back to grunting in the caves, if that time is how long we've been communicating, the amount of time that you have been able to write things down back to ancient papyrus in the desert is where this little elastic band is on the end of this strip. That is the amount of time that we've been able to write things down compared with our ability to communicate as human beings. The amount of time we've been able to communicate by social media, by whizzing a WhatsApp, by doing a 30-second dance on TikTok is so far off the end of this scale, there is no elastic band small enough to fit. So as a human being, you and your audience are hardwired to listen to stories. So if we want to engage with our clients, if we want to be remembered through this looking glass and the Gorgon eye, it's stories that will convey it. And that's where I'll draw a line under this. Let me just conclude what we've been talking about. We've been covering some fundamentals, remembering that where your audience is the tiny little dot at the top of your screen. That is every single member of your audience. If we remember to smile, we engage. Our voice becomes richer and more engaging because we've remembered to smile. And our voice is richer because of it. And do those warm-up exercises. Get your voice as ready as a valve radio to perform. Check the background. Fundamentals out the way. And then we've just touched on a myriad of things, and we could do, there's a 12-week program that I run that covers the whole detail of how do we engage with clients to become the one that's remembered. We've just touched on memorable experiences wrapped around the content that we're delivering to help our audience remember it, and the power of stories behind facts and figures, which is what our audiences will take away. And with that, if I may, I will hand back to the wonderful Bethany to see if we've got anything pop up that, and do chuck any questions that occurred to you, chuck them in the chat now, and I'd be delighted to deal with them.
Thanks, Ges. We've already had a couple of questions come through. So the first one is, looking to one day when we can have in-person meetings, what tips could you give for body language while presenting?
Oh, now we can go off to a completely new workshop. Okay, let's start with a fundamental: breathing. How do you breathe both before you walk up to the front of that room? Okay, let's focus on the front of the room. It's your turn to speak. You are called to walk up that slope to the stage or to the front of the room, even just make it to the front of the meeting room. The risk for us when we're speaking is we end up like this, panic breathing, because the nerves are into us, and we get to the front and we just start speaking. Both for in the room and on screen, just take a really comfortable breath before you start. And we could spend the next half hour on voice exercises and breathing exercises, parallel to yoga, really. Get breathing right. You will be positioned correctly. Your voice will be positioned correctly. The pace will be better, and your audience will love you for it. So breathe is a key one for that one.
Perfect. And how do you balance looking at the camera with presenting slides and referring to a script?
There's an interesting one, isn't it? Scripts. In the old days, in the room, of course, we wanted to actually be off copy, didn't we? But there was nothing wrong in having some little cue cards that you could refer to. This actually gives us an advantage doing this, presenting this way, because we can use scripts. You need to rehearse in the first one. So let me just put that in context. If you just jot down a few notes and try and give them, with just notes that you've written 30 seconds ago, the chances are that you'll put that script down somewhere, and what you'll do is this will happen. I'm making noises because the paper is over the mic on the Mac, and that's probably made you go, oh. And you'll be doing this as you spend more time looking down at the paper rather than actually coming back to the screen. So scripts is something that my suggestion is should be rehearsed, not till it's boring. I used to do public speaking competitions for the British Junior Chamber of Commerce in the early 1980s. The maxim we worked to was for every minute of a speech was a week's worth of preparation. So a 7 or 8 minute competition speech was 2 months worth of work. If you haven't got your script rehearsed enough to be comfortable and to be able to play with it, then it's going to come across as rigid. But what you can do, and what I do, and I'll admit it quite happily here, is I've got notes on a sheet of paper, and the joy of being on screen is we can rest them on the laptop just a fraction of an inch away from the camera, just to make sure that we've covered the key points that we wanted to. So those are my suggestions with scripting. Get comfortable, get rehearsed, and then why not make use of the ability we've got on screen to give you the prompts to hand.
Great. And someone else has said, way back in March, I took your advice and subsequently always try to speak to the camera, post-it note with big arrow. However, the most difficult thing I find with Zoom is giving facial feedback to camera when a client or someone else is speaking. It's hard to watch them and know when they are watching you, watching them, giving them non-verbal feedback to camera. Any tips?
Yes. So here, isn't it interesting when we deliver in a room? Oh, to be back in a room where we could take the cues as they happen. So when someone gives you a face, you know that you've got to try and explain that a bit more. When someone's really, you know it's landed. So all those verbal cues, all those the facial cues, the physical cues were in the room, and we could deal with them automatically. What we have to do now is prepare what we are delivering to the point where we are 95% certain what the reaction is going to be when it lands the other side. So it comes back to gaining the skills to deliver in this way. We've got to be able to work out what the impact is going to be when it lands. So that's everything to do with understanding our audience, having worked out what it is that we're delivering, what the result is likely to be, and almost anticipating what that reaction is going to be so that we can respond as if we know what the reaction was when it landed, but still give us the time to occasionally just go back to the screen. In this circumstance, I absolutely agree with you. I remember doing a webinar back last summer when this first happened, and there was no interactivity in that. It was all pre-recorded, but the chat was happening live. So what I had to do there was to land the questions like, give us A, B, or C, and put it in the chat room. And I had to plan the performance of how that was going to work as if I was seeing the chat room, so that when the film was being run, everyone was responding live in the chat, and yours truly was going, oh, I can see the results coming, and that's really interesting. The message there is we need to plan the content way more, way far ahead, and 10 times the effort that we are comfortable with and used to doing from when we're working in the room.
Great. And what are your tips for managing public speaking nerves?
Rehearse, definitely rehearse. And I'll come back to breathing. Someone mentioned sort of mindfulness here. Whatever it is that appeals to you in terms of that genre, getting comfortable and relaxed. My practical suggestion is getting the breathing right. And if we were all on screen now, what I'd be doing, I'll do it now. I'll do it. So let me step slightly back from the screen. And I'm going to ask you to put your hands down, whether you're sitting or standing. As you know, we can't do it here. There's not quite that space, but physically, let's do that exercise. Put your hand down to where your belt buckle would be if you were wearing a belt. And I'm gonna count to 3 and ask you to breathe in, and breathe in not with the chest breathing, which we tend to do automatically, but taking the breath down to your hand, and as you breathe in, force out your belt buckle. So after 3, 1, 2, 3, breathe in, and breathe out again. And again, after 3, breathe in, force your hand out where your belt buckle is. 1, 2, 3, breathe in, and breathe out again. We've just done 2 deep breaths. How are you feeling? If anyone's feeling different, just chuck it in the chat box right now. But if we do that before we go up, before we're ready to present, before, in the 5-10 minutes before we're coming on screen, it will help calm your nerves. It will help get you relaxed and confident. And then one last tip to finish that off: make sure that your opening line, the thing that you are first going to say, is so well rehearsed that you don't even need to think about it. Don't get distracted. Don't, as we sometimes do, pick up on flavors that have just come from the introduction. Yeah, acknowledge the introduction, but give your opening line that is so well rehearsed that you can just be comfortable, relaxed, smile, and deliver it. And then you're in the zone, and you're in a much better place to stick to your script and not go wandering off and disappearing down rabbit holes.
Yeah. And someone has said, I feel like I'm working harder on the screen, especially when listening to other people. It's hard to relax in a way as you're conscious of yourself. And I suppose that ties into Zoom fatigue, doesn't it? And managing your energy when online and speaking in that way.
I absolutely agree. So I'll give you a practical example. I run workshops for clients, which would have been a day in a room together, 10 people, great interaction, and we cover a full working day, really enjoyable. And it's tiring at the end, but everyone goes home full of beans and enjoyed it. You try doing that on Zoom and everyone's just switched off. So that type of workshop is now broken into chunks. Maybe it's 2 half days or 3 sections across a couple of days with some space in between. You're absolutely right. The effort required, not only to present. Someone asked very early in the chat, Ges, are you standing? Yes, I am, because if you stand, you get 80% extra more energy because all the physiology is right. You are breathing from the right place rather than cramped over a desk. You are able to deliver that energy through the screen. But even as an audience member, listening through a screen is hard work. I absolutely agree with you. And I think we have to put in our diaries time to, go and have a little nap, have a cup of tea and switch off for 10 minutes and have a doze. Why shouldn't we? It's a very different animal working on screen.
Totally. Well, thank you, Ges, for joining us today. It's been great. So thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. And thank you for being part of the audience.
Yeah, thank you to our audience for watching. If you did want to go back and rewatch any of today's webinar, it will be up on EM3 Growth Hub's YouTube page, along with all the other previous webinars. And next week, we have an online event on online selling in 2021. So details are on the Growth Hub website. So thank you again, and we'll see you next time.